Hello everybody, this is Simon with Let's Play Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge. The final level, the big climax in space. And it is the worst level in the game. But we're going to see more of that after I show off the awesome Mirror Buster. Which is actually not that bad of a weapon, but for reasons which I'm going to go into later, I'm not going to use it anymore in this stage, sadly enough. So, reason number one for why this stage is really fucking bad. Forced carry usage for absolutely no reason, twice in a row. And this time we can't even scroll it off screen to make the weapon energy usage less. Also, these ice blocks had to be there, obviously, because this is the only time they appear in the Wily levels and we have to show off all the gimmicks, right? Right? Yeah, anyway. This, for example, is also a pretty bad piece of level design. What are these supposed to accomplish and how are they worse in any way than any other elect beams we've seen so far? In fact, they are far easier. And this, on the other hand, is a real dick move, which can really easily kill you unless you just tank the hit and, well, that's it. This, however, is probably one of the best stretches in the level, surprisingly enough, even though it is a block puzzle, but it is not actually a puzzle, as is readily apparent. You can keep moving forward, and I've always liked these, because it is just, well, normal platforming in a way, just that the platforms aren't readily visible. Apart from this little trick at the end, it's really fair, and I have absolutely no problems with it. This is not a good room, and this isn't either, most especially because this is the respawn point for the level. So everything after now, this corridor full of big eyes, and yes, we have to fight 2 more of them, means it will have to get repeated whenever you die. And as we're talking about a shitty level full of dick moves here, it is kind of possible that you die. By the way, atomic fire, still a very fucking bad weapon, yes. So anyway, it is really possible that you die and have to do this gauntlet of assholes again and again with diminishing special weapon levels. And do not have to tell you that this is not exactly fun, right? Especially with the respawn on this guy here being really unforgiving. Okay, then we enter this part where the saw blade enemies are in full swing, because they are obviously the hardest enemy in the game. Meaning that having them in Cutman's stage, which is probably a good choice for the first stage, most people would think is not that cool of the game. As is this. You could probably see this stick move coming if you've played a lot of Mega Man, especially Hitman's fucking level, but that doesn't make it better. Which is even worse is that it is 3 times in a row. I've heard someone say that that makes it better because you can, of course, anticipate it. But the timing is still ass. And if you fuck this up once, and you will have to fuck it up at least once at the start, very cute here by the way, very cute, then you will have to go back to the big eye room, and I don't have to tell you how much fucking fun this is probably going to be. Now the ambush of these guys here, maybe he can die in a single charged atomic fire, spoilers, he won't. Actually, I do think that I didn't charge enough because I definitely remember having killed one of these guys with one of them before, but that doesn't change the fact that atomic fire is an absolutely horrible weapon. Yes, even in this incarnation, it is just absolutely not worth using at all. So, back to the hardest enemies in the game. And the surprisingly effective bubble lead, except for the arc, which coupled with the small screen size really hurts the weapon here. Sadly enough, because you will probably need it here, unless you're really good at dodging a lot of enemies at once, because holy shit is this section brutal. It's strangely enough going to get easier later on, but if you do not know that bubble lead kills them very quickly, then you are in a world of pain. Otherwise, you can also, which I out of pride didn't want to do, just time stop it. But yeah, the that it is pretty easy at the end actually, if you lure this one here to the left, as he will slaughter you probably, does make me think that they were kind of slipping in the level design compartment at the end, which is a problem many Mega Man games have, which I've never understood, but maybe they were figuring people wouldn't get so far anyway, so By the way, you have to have Fire Shield, yes I know it's Firestorm, but it's a shield, out here at the top, otherwise the PPs will hit you. 100%. No idea how you would dodge them otherwise, and it still surprised me here. This is in principle a really neat idea because it gives you a preview of how the room is going to pan out, and then you go through it S-shaped like. But in practice, PPs are a fucking horrible enemy, and combined with the awful ladder physics, well, we all saw in Crashman stage in Mega Man 2 how that panned out. Yes, obviously, these walls can be destroyed by a fully charged atomic fire, which is why I was giving weapon energy earlier on. Forced carry usage is still kind of pointless in that aspect, and if you're out of carry energy, then you will have to go back to the PPs, making their inclusion logical as an enemy farming spot. But the inclusion of an enemy farming spot all in itself is still really stupid, so I do not know what to think about that. The only thing we gain from this optional path with the second and final wall, which can be destroyed by atomic fire, fortunately enough because you have only 3 fully charged uses of it after all, just leads to a slightly easier path with a few more weapon energies, and whoops, you still need carry out because this is still Dick Move Central. I cannot emphasize this enough. Okay, another showing of Janky Makers, and one of the last spots to really farm for weapon energy, which you should if you haven't got full Mirror Buster energy. Spoilers, you will need it. You will need it fully, and you will hate yourself if you don't have it. Then one good opportunity to use Time Stopper in an actual level context. As I said, there is a better one before if you do not hate yourself like I probably do. A very pointless section here. And these are very intimidating, but actually easily dealt with by holding left. And no, you hold right, because otherwise you will miss this life, which is completely meaningless, as we're going to see in a second, because it is time for the final boss after this very unassuming intro. But as we already saw, you have to fall down into every boss chamber for some reason. This boss spoos the hardest enemies in the game, again, and it is relatively hard to avoid, but not that hard. The biggest problem about this boss is this. You respawn right in front of him. Why? Well, we're going to see in a second. For now, first part, actually do not know if he has a weakness. I never tried because it is not really that hard. He always alternates between high and low, and so you can very easily adjust to where you have to stand in order to jump over the lower ones and have the higher ones fly over your head. I don't think it is really rocket science. Now, the biggest problem here is that it is not immediately obvious what you have to do, and even then it is relatively hard to pull off. You need the Mirror Buster to damage this boss. 100% needed. Did you see that laser appear just now? Yeah, it is kind of tiny. And there is absolutely no other way to damage him. Yeah, so if I die here now to the very damaging claw or the very damaging laser, and I have like 1/3 weapon energy left, then I will be forced to kill myself over and over and over again. Which is not fun at all. No, and then you have to start over the entire stage. Horrible design. Not good at all. Too many Mega Man bosses, even in later NES incarnations, are weak to only one single weapon. I do not understand that. But yeah, rant over. The fight itself is not that hard. You can lure out the claw. As you can see, it will always go to Mega's position, and then it's only a question of timing, but holy shit. The whole setup is just not good, and the stage before is not fun in the slightest. I'm sorry. Anyway, we've reached the end of this little game. The credit sequence here is fairly long and really good. It's going to be a complete enemy gallery, which is decidedly more useful and interesting than, hey, remember the 8 bosses you just refought from the NES games. On the other hand, it's also fantastically badly translated, with half the enemies retaining their Japanese names, which is the source of a lot of confusion. I blame stupid wiki entries with names like Gabioal for the spines, mostly on this, and Weeaboos of course. But anyway, about the game. Generally, I'm very willing to look at Dr. Wily's Revenge in a positive light. As mentioned before, I think it has impressively mastered the challenge of downsizing the NES games for the Game Boy. I have heard dissenting opinions about the sprites being too big and the screen being too cluttered, but I disagree. Everything is exactly the right size for what it needs to be. Because this is not an action platform in the same vein as the Big Brothers, it is a far slower paced game which has great emphasis on very instant obstacles. Single rooms with few or no enemies instead of long stretches full of them. If the sprites were smaller, then of course that would also have been possible, but it would also have changed the game even more from the original. Example: Super Mario Land with its tiny sprites is incredibly different from any other Mario game. And the bigger sized sequel 6 Golden Coins manages to hold up far better, despite there being less room to jump in. This gameplay change, demanding a more focused and deliberate approach from the player, of course also demands a high level of care from the designers to make every mini-puzzle solvable. As you have less life to work with, dying just from damage is a far bigger possibility than in any of the NES games, so it needs to be far more consistent to avoid getting hit. Did the designers succeed here? Well, let's say they did quite a few times. I think it's readily apparent from what I showed off that there are many parts of the levels which are fiendishly clever, both regarding the problem and the solution. However, there are also those parts which are just fiendish. This game is very challenging, and a bit too often for the wrong reasons. I try to point out many of the dick moves you'll encounter when playing, and I'm sure I still missed a lot. Each stage is full of them. This gets far worse in the final 2 levels, which require an incredible amount of trial and error deaths to get through, leading to so many people stating that they did like playing the game, but never reached the end out of sheer frustration. That's one way to how that it's only 6 levels, I guess, which is valid criticism, I think, as later games in the series show cartridge size couldn't have been an issue. Overall, this is a game with huge problems, but I think I was able to point out how it has moments which are still brilliant and show great promise. The talent is here, but not the experience. Another example for that is the new music. I love the stage select and password themes, but the Wily stage tracks just aren't good at all, most definitely not for the final climax level in space. The composers at Minakuchi are capable of some truly amazing stuff though, and maybe I will be able to show that off for you too. To conclude, I have fun playing Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge, but that gets seriously drained in the completely insane gauntlet of the very bad final 2 stages. It is very much an experimental game, gauging what was possible on the Game Boy and what not. As such, incredibly important for the series as a whole, and for what it's worth, surely a fantastic time waster on boring trips at the back of a car. It did definitely sell very well, warranting a sequel, a good opportunity for Minakuchi's designers to improve, right? In closing, I would recommend checking the game out with an open mind for how novel the approach to the classic formula is, and with a big grain of salt if you want to actually complete it. In case this has always frustrated you too much, now you had at least me to show it fully. I hope I didn't disappoint. This is Simon, this was Let's Play Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge, and thank you very much for your attention.